Good evening, friends. In today's class, I will be making a presentation on literary forms and terms which are prescribed for BA second BA second year third semester English literature syllabus prescribed by Nagpur University. This class is being organized under the cluster of colleges, and the three colleges that are organizing this class are राजकुमार केवल रमानी कन्या महाविद्यालय जरीपटका नागपुर, MK Umathe Arts and Commerce College Nagpur, and Vasantrao Naik Government Institute of Arts and Social Sciences Nagpur. I am Dr. Kapil Singhel, and as I've already told you that I will be taking this session on literary forms and terms which are prescribed for BA Part 2 third semester English literature syllabus prescribed by Rashtra Sant Tukaroji Maharaj Nagpur University, Nagpur. So I'm sharing my screen. So as in all the 6 semesters, we have one or the other literary form, either it's form of poems, drama, novels, or and literary terms which are prescribed for in the unit 4 of the prescribed syllabus for BA Part 2 third semester. We have types of novels. The types of novels which are prescribed are picaresque novel, epistolary novel, Gothic novel, sentimental novel, historical novel, domestic novel, Regency novel, and black comedy. Now, we will deal with each novel independently hereafter. The first novel is picaresque novel. Now, the word picaresque has originated in Spanish word picaro, and the meaning of word picaro is rogue or rascal. So picaresque novel has taken its name from a Spanish word which means a rogue or a rascal, and it is the hero of the novel who is considered to be of that quality in this aspect of literature. The hero is an anti-hero. He is a person with shortcomings. He is not a thoroughly good person. There are certain shortcomings in his character, as we have in the character of any human being. So the first thing is about the origin of the word picaresque. It has originated from Spanish word picaro, which means rogue or rascal, as the hero of any picaresque novel is. Then this kind of novel gained popularity during the 17th and the 18th century writing. So during the 17th century, that is 1600, and 18th century, that is 1700. Huh? So during these centuries, it was that this form of novel gained popularity in English literature. Now, the features of this novel are that the hero of this novel is either an orphan or poor, and he's on constant move. He's consistently moving from one place to another. So that is the first quality of a picaresque novel. The first thing is hero either has to be an orphan, no parentage, or even if parents are there, through the story we are not sure who are the parents of that hero or heroine. Maud Flanders is a heroine. That is also picaresque novel. So the hero or an heroine, they are an orphan or poor, and they are not static at one place. They are moving from one place to another, and it is during their travel that they face certain challenging situations, different kind of characters, different episodes, which are either realistic in nature, or uh, they are just there to give a kind of variety to the plot of the novel. So it serves both the purpose, and the hero uh, or heroine who is constantly moving from one place to another, comes across different kind of characters, faces certain situations which are challenging, and on this travel, on this journey, there are different episodes, different incidents. So that tells us about the plot of this kind of novel. Huh? The plot is not a coherent plot. It is not a closely stitched plot. It is incoherent. But there is one thing that keeps the plot together, and that is the hero or the heroine, the main character, the protagonist. All these incidents, all these episodes are directly or indirectly related to this character, to this main protagonist. So, the plot of this kind of novel, of a picaresque novel, lacks unity. It lacks unity, it is incoherent, and uh, as the story progresses, as the story moves, it's a long story, and these are long novels, voluminous, but there is not much development of the character. The character remains same through the novel, right from the beginning to the end. He may be growing, no doubt. It starts with the childhood, and the age might be growing, but the character remains the same. The attitude, the behavior, the qualities, they remain the same. And the fourth thing about this kind of novel is that they are narrated in first person. When I was born, that is how David Copperfield starts, Charles Dickens' David Copperfield. So these novels, they are narrated in the first person, and they are satirical in tone, satirical in manner. So these are the features of picaresque novel. Origin of the word, popularity during the 17th and the 18th centuries, and the different features. First, the hero is poor or an orphan. Second, he's moving from one place to another, and during this travel, during this movement, we have different episodes which are challenging situations, and it is through these situations that the protagonist comes across the different kind of characters. But as there is no unity of time, place, and action, the plot of this kind of novel is incoherent. Hmm? There is not much development of character. The character remains the same through the novel, through the story, and it is narrated in the first person, narrated in first person in satirical manner. Now, some of the famous picaresque novels are Tobias Smollett's The Adventures of Roderick Random, Henry Fielding's Tom Jones, Voltaire's Candide, and Saul Bellows' Augie March. These are some of the few. These are the few examples of picaresque novel. Well, there are other famous novels. We have Joseph Andrews, Oliver. Uh, there is one Oliver. I don't remember now. What is the other one? That is there, and Charles Dickens, David Copperfield is there, Robinson Crusoe is there. So these all are picaresque novel. But the novels which the example which are which have been mentioned in your text are these novels: the novels by Tobias Smollett, The Adventures of Roderick Random, Henry Fielding's Tom Jones, Voltaire's Candide, and Saul Bellows' Augie March are the examples of picaresque novel. The next novel after picaresque novel is epistolary novel. Now, the word epistolary is derived from a word epistle, and epistle means a letter. So, epistolary novel is about writing a letter. Now, the development of plot, the movement of story, the movement of action in this novel is supported through the incidents, the events which are mentioned through a letter by one character to another character. So, in this way, the story progresses. So, the word epistolary is derived from the word epistle, that means letter, and in this form, in this form of novel, the story progresses through letters sent by the characters involved in the action or by those observing it. Either the character who's writing a letter is a part of that action, he or she is affected by whatever is going on in the plot, in the story of the novel, or else they are just observing it and they are writing it, and they are telling it to the another character, and in this way the story progresses through letters, and that is why it is known as epistolary novel. This form of novel, it studies, provides a look into the mind of a character. It studies the mind. Now, when a person is revealing, when is it a person is writing a letter, what is revealed, what is going on in the mind of that character. And so, when it comes to this consciousness, to this mind, psychology comes in, and so this kind of novel is considered to be a forerunner to modern psychological novel. In the modern fiction, in the modern novels, they are dominated by the study of psychology, stream of consciousness novel. Now, this novel, epistolary novel, is important because it is considered to be a forerunner. It is the base of the modern psychological novel that we have today. So, it studies the mind of a character, and so is considered to be a forerunner to modern psychological novel. Now, the features of this novel are that the plot is unfolded through letters, revealed. What is going on, the action is explained, is described through letters first. Second, the other documents like diary entries, telegrams, newspaper clippings, they play an important role in the development of the plot. Whatever, either the character directly or some observer, they are writing something in a diary, their observations, their thoughts, the thinking process, they are mentioning it in black and white in diary, or they are conveying it to someone else through telegrams. Those were the days of telegrams. Nowadays we have internet facilities and mobile and everything, so telegram is not that much required, but in those days the situation was different. So diary entries, telegrams, and newspaper clippings. They play an important role in the development of plot. But the drawback of this kind of novel is that its plot suffers from certain amount of artificiality. When the things are moving ahead through letters, through telegrams, through paper clippings, of course, the one thing that comes in is artificiality. The natural depiction of story, the natural movement of plot, that somewhere is affected because of this. So the epistolary novel has a drawback that it suffers from certain amount of artificiality. And the famous epistolary novels are, well, Samuel Richardson's Pamela, and Clarissa. Richardson is considered to be a father of epistolary novel. His novels Pamela and Clarissa are the good examples of epistolary novels. Then we have Jean Webster's Daddy Longleg, another epistolary novel, and Alice Walker's The Color Purple, which is one of the latest in the categories. So these are the examples of epistolary novel. So meaning of the word epistolary, it has come from letter. The story progresses through the thoughts expressed by the characters or by the observers by writing letter or sending telegrams, or through paper clippings. Then the plot suffers from artificiality, and some of the famous novels which belong to the genre of epistolary novel, to the type of epistolary novel, they are Richardson's Pamela and Clarissa, Jane Webster's Daddy Longleg, and Alice Walker's The Color Purple. The next is Gothic novel. Now the word Gothic is derived from the word Goths, Goths, an early medieval German tribe. Medieval, of the Middle Ages, when superstition was there, people were superstitious. Science hasn't made this the impact that it has today on the society. In those days, when black magic was considered to be something that really exists, in those days, we have a Goth, a tribe in Germany, early medieval German tribe in the early part of the Middle Ages. So during those days, we have Goth, a tribe, a German tribe, and it is from this the name of this tribe that the name of this novel has been taken as Gothic novel. Now, Gothic novels, they narrate a story of mystery or horror, suspense, mystery, and horror. It is filled with terror. It is something that makes you fear through supernatural element. Ghosts are there, murder, there are many murders, many people are killed, and the supernatural world plays an important role in these novels. So it narrates the story of mystery and horror. It has been derived from the word Goths, which was a name of early medieval German tribe, and it is a story of mystery and horror. And features of this kind of novel are that the action takes place in haunted castles or at a secluded place in medieval Europe. Haunted castles, haunted, which are regularly visited by the supernatural spirits, by the people who have left this physical world and they still exist. So they are moving near that castle. They are there near that castle. It is a haunted one. It is secluded, away from the city. Ekant, secluded place somewhere in medieval Europe. There is creation of suspense and fear. mystery and horror, so suspense and fear have to be there. Supernatural elements play an important role. Even this I have told you. And the heroine of this kind of novel is beautiful and virtuous lady. She is beautiful and virtuous heroine, and she is oppressed. Huh? She faces lot of trouble, lot of difficulties, a difficult time, because of a powerful male figure, who is consistently harassing her, who is giving her trouble, consistently giving her trouble. So these are the features of Gothic novel. Now, some of the famous Gothic novels, Horace Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, that is there. Anne Radcliffe's Mysteries of Udolpho, Matthew Lewis, The Monk, Robert Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. These are the examples of Gothic novels. So, the origin of the word Gothic, then the basic thing about Gothic novel, that it is a story of mystery and horror. The setting is in haunted castle or at a secluded place. There is suspense and fear. Supernatural elements, they play an important role. And the heroine is beautiful and virtuous, and through the story she is harassed, troubled by some powerful male figure, but ultimately in the end, the story ends on a happy note for that heroine, for that lady. And some examples of this kind of novel have been given there. They are Walpole's The Castle of Otranto, Radcliffe's Mysteries of Udolpho, Matthew Lewis says The Monk, Robert Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and Oscar Wilde's The Picture of Dorian Gray. These are the examples of Gothic novel. Now the next novel is sentimental novel. Now sentimental, sentiment, emotional, where emotional starts dominating the thought process. That is the stage of that sentimentality. So the sentimental novel is also known as novel of sensibility. The meaning of word sentimental here is having refined or elevated feelings. Refined or elevated feelings. So as I've told you that it is a stage where feelings, they start dominating the thoughts. And what kind of feeling it is? Refined or elevated. The features of this form of novel are that it relies on the emotional response from both the characters and the readers. Readers, they too become a part and parcel of the story, and along with the characters, they too are emotionally affected. So this novel, it relies on, it is dependent on the emotional response from both the character and the readers. Uh, uh, this kind of novel, they are a spotlight on the weaker section of the society, and thus they have played an important role in creating awareness. Now, the two important aspects: one, that emotional response is important from character point of view as well as reader point of view, and the other thing is that it's spotlight. The theme of this kind of novel is about the weaker section of the society, and they have played a significant role, a vital role, an important role in creating awareness. Now, some of the famous sentimental novels are Oliver Goldsmith's The Vicar of Wakefield, Lawrence Stern's Sentimental Journey Through France and Italy, and Henry Mackenzie's The Man of Feeling. These are the three examples of sentimental novel. The Vicar of Wakefield by Oliver Goldsmith, Sentimental Journey Through France and Italy by Lawrence Stern, and The Men of Feeling by Henry Mackenzie. So, this sentimental novel, hmm, uh, two features that we have to remember: huh? Emotion, that is what is important, and second, it is about the weaker section of the society, and a few examples, three, to be accurate. We have three examples of sentimental novel. Then historical novel, as the word suggests, huh? The theme of this novel, the story of this novel, huh, is develops on an event or character, who has occupied a place in the history. Hmm? In this form of novel, an event or character from history occupies the center stage in the plot. Huh? Not necessary that the history will be perfectly followed. There are additions, there are omissions, there is modification, the change is there, to make to fit it in accordance to the genre of a novel. That adjustment, of course, it is there, but the main theme of the novel is either an event or character who has taken a center, who occupies an important place in the books of history. So this form of novel, we have an event or character from, in this form of novel, an event or character from history occupies the center stage, one thing. Second, history is reconstructed, as I've told you. It is not the same history, what they will take it from the book of history and present it as it is. No, it is, there is either addition, they may add one or two more characters, they may add some other incident which hasn't taken place in the history. So through addition, through modification, change, or subtraction, removing something, certain things, the things are adjusted, the story is modified with this addition and subtraction of certain element that is found in the books of history. So the history is not taken as it is. That is the another important aspect of historical novel. Now the features of this novel are that the novel is set in a past historical period. Has to be, if it is a historical novel, it is about the event that has taken place in the past, which is there in the books of history now. It is an amalgamation of historical and imaginary characters. As I've told you, the history is not followed as it is. There is some addition, there is subtraction, there is modification. So it has amalgamation, combination of historical character who were really there in the history in the past. They were there, and there is some addition of some imaginary characters, or some characters of history. They might remove them and they may replace them by some imaginary character. Then there is intensive research of the period to which the story belongs. And the intensive research of the period to which story belongs is carried out. It is not that the writer starts writing immediately. First, they have to study the history of that period. Intensive study has to be taken out, has to be carried out. So, intensive research of the period to which the story belongs is carried out. And these are the important features of this form of novel, that is historical novel. And some of the famous historical novels, of course, Walter Scott is a master of historical novels. His Waverley, Rob Roy, Ivanhoe. These are the important. These are the historical novels by Sir Walter Scott, then Dickens' famous novel A Tale of Two Cities, and equally famous other novel of Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. So Tolstoy's War and Peace, Dickens's A Tale of Two Cities, and Scott's Walter Scott's Waverley and Rob Roy are the examples of historical novel which are there in your text. Domestic novel. Now, domestic novel, household, a common theme, historical, gothic, picaresque, we have seen so far, isn't it? And what have we seen? Historical, sentimental, gothic, epistolary, picaresque. So these are the themes that we have seen. Now domestic novel, something with a common theme, domestic life, life of a family, of a common man. And so that kind of novel is known as a domestic novel. And this novel is also known as conduct novel. The conduct of a person, how a person should behave. In picaresque novel, the hero is free. There are two sides to his character, to his personality, good and bad. The actions, he is free to perform them, either good or bad. But in domestic novel, villain has to perform the actions which are not approved by the society, and it is hero who has to be very careful about his behavior, about his manners, about the actions. So conduct, that is behavior. This kind of novel, domestic novel, is also known as conduct novel. It is a subgenre of sentimental novel. Sentimental we have seen where emotions are important. The novel which speaks about the weaker section of the society. Now, the domestic novel has come out from sentimental novel, and it uses sentimentalism to convey message to its readers. So there is an application of sentimentalism in domestic novel. It applies sentimentalism to convey the message to its readers. Now the features of this novel is that the plot centers around a female protagonist. They are very important. They play an important, as Shakespearean tragedy and comedy. In comedy, heroines are more important. In tragedy, heroes are more important. Isn't it? Now, in domestic novel, it is women characters, the female characters who are more important, and the plot centers around a female protagonist. The protagonist undergoes several trials. They have to go through the several ordeals, trials, and tribulations, abuse and suffering at the hands of powerful people. They suffer, they are abused, they face trials, and they face all the hardship at the hand of some powerful person. And but they strike a balance. The personality of this female protagonist is that they strike a balance between the expectations of a society and the fulfillment of her own desire. Now, in those days, certain kind of behavior was expected from a lady. Male, they were free as they always had been. And but for women, there were certain restrictions. And these female characters, they struck a balance between the expectations of a society and the fulfillment of their own desires. And these novels usually end with marriage of the female protagonist. So again, an happy ending, as we have in the Gothic novel. Even in the sentimental novels, we have happy ending. And so in the domestic novel, we have this kind of ending. They usually end with the marriage of the female protagonist. And now some examples of domestic novels are Catherine Sedgwick's A New England Tale, uh, Maria Cummings' The Lamplighter, and Stephens' The Old Homestead. These are the three examples of domestic novel which are there in the text which is prescribed for you. Now, after domestic novel, we have Regency novel. Now, Regency novel. Now, what is Regency? Regency is a period of English history from 1811 to 1820. That period is known as Regency period. Why is it known as Regency period? Because the king of England, that is George the Third, he was not keeping well, and so his son George the Fourth was declared Prince Regent during this time. He was a caretaker as his dad was not keeping well. The person who would succeed the king, King George the Third, he was to be succeeded by George the Fourth. And so, though the king continued to remain on the throne of England, it was George the Fourth who was assigned the real responsibility of looking after the nation's administration. So George the Fourth was declared Prince Regent during this time, and so this period from 1811 to 1820, this decade is known as the Regency period, and the novels which were written during this time, during these years from 11 to 1811 to 1820, they are known as Regency novels. The period is known as Regency period, and the novels during this period are Regency novels. The novels written during Regency, they featured characters with high social background, not like the characters that we have in domestic novels, where the characters are common people, a family man. But here we have the characters who are with high social background, the royal families, the squires, and the court. These were the things which were there in the Regency, and the rich people, the landlords and all, the rich people, they were the important characters in this kind of novel. There is an emphasis on propriety and manners. Propriety and manners, emphasis, that is, they are given more importance, and the novels, they depict modern social thoughts among the upper classes of England. We have seen social thought in sentimental novels as well. They talk about the weaker section of the society. Similarly, the social thoughts which were there among the upper classes of England, they are revealed in the novels which were written during the Regency period. So this period includes the works of writers like P.B. Shelley, the famous poet, Walter Scott, the writer of historical novels, as we have seen, Jane Austen, another famous novelist, and Maria Edgeworth. They are the important novelists who have written during this period of 1800, from 1810 to 1820, and their novels are Regency novel. Now, some of the famous Regency novels are Pride and Prejudice, Ivanhoe, Tales of Fashionable Life, and Sense and Sensibility. These are the examples of Regency novel. Regency novel is called so because of the period in which they were written, though they have some special features as well. But it is the period from 1811 to 1820 that has given these novels the name Regency. And the last, about the forms of novel, about the types of novel, the last novel is black comedy. Another term, the black comedy, it was coined by Andre Breton by Andre Breton, Breton, Andreton, in 1935. So this term, the black comedy, was coined by Andre Breton in 1935, and he had used it to interpret the works of Jonathan Swift, The Battle of the Books. If you remember, the famous work of Jonathan Swift, uh, The Battle of the Book, Gulliver's Travels. So these are the famous work by him. So while interpreting the works of Jonathan Swift, the critic Andre Breton, he has coined this word, the black comedy, and he has coined this term, black comedy. However, the concept came to light first after publication of black humor in 1965. Though the term was given in 1935 by Andre Breton, yet it didn't get that popular as it should have been. It was in 1965 that it became popular after the publication of a book, Black Humor, which was published in 1965, and black comedy is also known as black humor. Now, this kind of novel, and the subject matter of this kind of novel, it presents serious thoughts. The subject is serious, but it is dealt in a light manner. While presenting serious thoughts in a light manner, it deals with a subject matter which is considered taboo by the society. Society supposes that this is certain thing that should not be discussed in a civilized society. The things like that, which are taboo, which shouldn't be discussed, which are considered to be vulgar, they are dealt with in this kind of novel. Serious thoughts in a light manner, and a subject matter which is considered taboo by the society. The characters of this novel, they are helpless individuals. Helpless, the things, the actions are not in their control. It are the other sources, the circumstances, which are affecting their actions. So they are helpless individuals victimized by fate. Victimized by fate. Fate is something, fate is a future that you cannot avoid. Destiny. Whatsoever you try, howsoever you try, how much you try, you won't be able to change that. That is known, that is fate. So it is the characters are helpless individuals. They are victims of fate. The fortune is not in their favor. They are not lucky enough, and sometimes it is also referred as gallows humor. Now, gallows is a place where a person is hanged, so to death for doing some crime. So it is also referred as gallows humor, as it frequently refers to the last words spoken by criminals. Swan's song, the last words spoken by a person, the words spoken by a person just before his or her death, that is known as Swan's song. So that is what is something which is frequently referred to in these kind of novels, and that is why they are also known as gallows humor, as they frequently refer to the last words spoken by criminal. And even the criminals are presented in a light-hearted manner. Now, these are the features of a black comedy. So these are the 8 different kinds of novels that are prescribed. Picaresque novel, epistolary novel, Gothic novel, sentimental novel, historical novel, domestic novel, Regency novel, and black comedy. Now we'll move on to the next section, that is about the literary terms. and these 8 literary terms are prescribed: maxim, memoir, metonymy, mimesis, myth, novella, onomatopoeia, and oxymoron. These are the 8 literary terms which are prescribed. Now let's understand them one by one. The first one, maxim. Uh, Maxim means to preach something. In stories or novels, we come across statements with preach moral. Hmm? Uh, in most of the literature, story, why only stories or novels? Even in poems, isn't it? In epics, there is preaching of morality. We often come across statements with preach moral. Now, these statements, they convey reality. This is what you have to maxim. They convey reality, the fact, and they share a principle along which one can lead a good life. One can lead a good life. That is what they tell. If you follow that, whatever has been conveyed has been tried to convey, to be conveyed. If you understand it and if you act accordingly, you can lead a good life. So maxims, they are the statements that preach moral, the statements that we come across in the pieces of literature. They convey reality, they tell about reality, and they share a principle along which one can lead a good life. Now these kind of statements, they are called maxim. They are called maxim, and a good example of a maxim that has been given in your text is that Rome was not built in a day. That means to achieve something great, to achieve something nice, you have to work hard. It's not there is no shortcut to success. There is no shortcut to success. Again, that is a maxim. Rome was not built in a day. It means that for any achievement in life or career, one has to work hard. To achieve anything, you have to work hard. It involves a lot of effort spanning over a considerable amount of time. Spanning, you have to spend a lot of time. You have to give a lot of time if you want to a particular task, if you want to be successful in your life or in your career. So that is what is we know. We are told by Rome was not built in a day, and this is an example of maxim. So the first literary term is maxim. Second, memoir. Memoir is a literary work which tells about the experiences and events in a person's life. Now, we have a kind of writing which is known as autobiography, atmakatha, biography, when someone else is writing about someone. So those kind of writings, they do come under this category, under the category of a memoir. Now, memoir is a literary work which refers to experiences and events in a person's life. It tells about certain ups and downs in a person's life. There is not that every person is rising and rising and rising, not like that. Graph has to come down sometime. It comes down, it again goes up. So life is full of ups and downs, full of success and failures. So these certain ups and downs which are there in a person's life, they are told in it, and these descriptions, they act as an inspiration for the readers and young generation. The main aim of this kind of writing is to inspire the readers and the generation to come, and the young generation, they should be inspired by the life of this great person who has faced ups and downs in his or her life. Then it traces the journey of an individual to reach the goals. The same meaning, nothing to be explained here. Mm, Now, they can be a work of a historical figure, like Akbar Nama on Akbar. Huh? That is a memoir. And the other example uh, is like Long Walk to Freedom on Nelson Mandela. Now, Akbar is a historical figure. No doubt, Nelson Mandela too will be an important part of human history always. But for us, he is a contemporary, isn't it? So now these are the two examples. There is an Akbar Nama, which is a memoir on Akbar, or now Akbar is a historical figure, and we have another memoir on Nelson Mandela. The title of that is Long Walk to Freedom. And now, why these two examples have been given? You see, even in the when it comes to historical figure, the same is followed, and when it comes to a modern figure and a contemporary figure, again the same thing is followed. It could be personally written, personally autobiographical element, autobiography, as I've told you. It can be personally written, or maybe by some other person, biography. So it is either in the form of an autobiography or biography. Akbar Nama, which was written by Abul Fazl, is a biography, whereas Barack Obama's memoir, Dreams from My Father, that is an autobiography. It is written by Obama himself. It is written by Barack Obama himself. So, memoir can be of two type. Either the person himself or herself telling his or her story, or someone else telling about the person. So autobiographical and biographical. That is what you have to remember. And what is memoir? That is what you should understand. Now, metonymy. Now we come to a figure of speech. Metonymy. The pen is mightier than the sword. Now, what does it mean? The pen means a writer. The sword means a soldier. A writer is mightier than a soldier. A writer represents mind, intelligence, brilliance. Soldier represents strength, isn't it? Skill, power. Ultimately, but who is mightier? It is the writer. The pen is mightier than the sword. Now the pen stands for a writer. The sword stands for a soldier. Now, when one thing symbolizes something else, as the pen symbolizes writer and sword symbolizes soldier, this kind of statement is a figure of speech, and that figure of speech is metonymy. Metonymy is a figure of speech. In it, a thing or a name is used as a substitute for something else. A thing, vastu, or name. They are used for something else. Pen doesn't mean pen. Pen here means writer. Sword doesn't mean talwar. It means a soldier, sipai. Now they stand for them. They are symbols of a writer and a soldier. So they are substituting. They substitute for something else. Now this is an example of metonymy. For instance, for example, the saying, I have already given you this example. The pen is mightier than the sword. In it, pen is a substitute for a writer and sword is for a soldier. Similarly, the crown is used to refer to a king. When it talks about crown, the crown stands for a king. Sword stands for a soldier. Pen stands for a writer. Similarly, the crown stands for a king. Shakespeare is used to refer to. There is something grammatically wrong in this sentence. Uh, it has been overlooked anyway. Now, in Shakespeare's work, this word crown is repeatedly used for a king. That is what I wanted to suggest in the last sentence. So, metonymy, it is a figure of speech in which a thing or name is used as a substitute for something else. And I have given you three examples. The example of a pen, a sword, or a crown. They stand for, pen stands for writer, sword stands for soldier, and crown stands for a king. Hmm? That is what it symbolizes something else. When one thing symbolizes something else, and this kind of uh, language is known as metonymy, which is a figure of speech. Now, mimesis. It is derived from a Greek word, mimesthai, meaning to imitate. Try to imitate something. Trying to emulate, EMULATE. किसी का किसी के देख के उसके जैसा कोशिश उसके जैसा बिहेव करने की या व्यवहार करने की कोशिश करना. इट डजंट कम नेचुरली. You look at someone else and you try to imitate that person. Nakal karna, है ना? So the word mimesis is derived from a Greek word, mimesthai, which means to imitate. The outside world is a source of inspiration and subjects to writers. Of course, if you know language, so there has to be something, some experience that you can explain through that language. Just knowing the language is not enough. The observation is enough. The glance of outside world is required, and the knowledge of outside world is required. So the outside world, this outside world, it is a source of inspiration for subjects to writers. It inspires many themes of writing, and mimesis is an attempt by these writers to imitate the real world. To imitate the real world, the outside world, the world of nature, and the real world of human beings. The poet tries to imitate, tries to draw an analogy between a relationship, certain similarities between the outside world and the human beings. So this act is known as mimesis. This genre is known as mimesis. So it is an act of representation rather than merely copying. Not that just looking at them and noting it down objectively is enough. No, that is not enough. It is an act of representation, and it is not merely copying, only copying, just describing a certain thing. That is not it. It is not like that. For example, Wordsworth's works, they draw a strong reference and a parallel with nature. Wordsworth, the romantic poet, he was a poet of nature, and he draws a parallel, he draws an analogy, a relationship between human beings and nature. His Tintin Abbey is about the philosophies of nature. The Tintin Abbey by William Wordsworth is about the philosophies of nature. And another famous poem, The Daffodils, in that he has drawn parallel between life movements and the movements of those flowers, daffodils, and the way they are moving, but the way they are moving because of the blowing wind, because of the wind. So their movements and the movements of life, they have been compared, they have been related in the poem The Daffodils. So the examples of two famous poems of Wordsworth have been given to us. We have examples of mimesis in the Tintin Abbey by William Wordsworth, and in the Daffodils, which is again by William Wordsworth. Now, myth. Now, this is not a new word for you. Mythology, we all know. Uh, the word myth is derived from Greek word mythos. Mythos means a story or plot which may or may not be true. No one is sure. There is no guarantee. There is no evidence. कोई सबूत नहीं है that whatever is being told is truth. That is what mythology. That is what is called mythology. And so the word myth is derived from Greek words mythos, meaning a story or plot which may be true or which may not be true. They are the stories, myth are the stories which have come down to us from generations, which have been handed down to generations. Our great grandfather, he read the same story. Great great grandfather, then great grandfather, he read the same story. Then grandfather, then father. Now we are reading the same story, and then our children will also read the same story. Now it moves, the generation changes, but it still remains there. Mythology remains there. They are stories which are handed down to generations, and they form the basis for establishing traditions and socially accepted norms. So they play an important role. They play an important role in establishing traditions, parampara, and they give shape or restriction to the behavior of the society, of the people. So and socially accepted norms. Civilization, there are certain socially accepted norms in civilization. Something which are acceptable, something which are not acceptable. And when you keep the non-acceptable away, it becomes a civilized society. So they form the basis for establishing traditions and socially accepted norms. Most of the myths, they are linked to rituals. Rituals which are performed. Which, rituals which are performed during the ceremonies. Maybe any kind of ceremony, wedding, some festival, some auspicious occasion, whatever it is. Now, they are affected by most of the myth. They are linked to these rituals. It is different from legend. Now, what is a legend? Legend is a story relating to supernatural element. Myth is different from legend. A story relating to supernatural element is a myth, and the one which deals with human being is a legend. That is a difference between myth and legend. How is myth different from legend? The character of myth is a supernatural personality, is a person with qualities of supernatural elements, whereas on the other hand, legend is something that deals with a person who is a normal human being. That is the difference between legend and myth. They are a part of larger system myths. We have Greek mythology, we have Hindu mythology, and we have Chinese mythologies. And you see, these all are the great civilizations of the world. Greek civilization, then Hindu civilization, and Chinese civilization. So myths, they are a part of this system, and they have given these great civilizations. And these are the civilizations which have survived the time, which has survived the generations from the ancient time. So myth has played an important role in that. Now the last, now the last three, now the last three uh, literary terms, hmm, not given in much detail, even in your text. And the first of that is novella. Novella is a short novel. As I've seen a Picaresque novel, voluminous, 4 books, 5 books, that is there. And most of the novels that we have seen, the types of novel that we have seen, when it comes to novel, it's lengthy, it's voluminous. On the other hand, novella means something new. The word novella has come from Italian word novella, which means new. Huh? Now it is a story which is longer than a short story, but shorter than a novel. Short story is very short. Novel is very long. Novella is something which comes between the short story and a novel. When it comes to length, about the length of that story. So, novella is derived from Italian word. That is what you have to remember. And it is a story longer than a short story, but shorter than a novel. Now, Animal Farm by George Orwell is a good example of novella. Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, another example of novella. And The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. Just a famous novel, but just of 103 pages, The Old Man and the Sea. They are the popular examples of novella in English literature. So, novella, the word has come from Italian. It's an Italian word. It is a story which is longer than short story but shorter than novel. And the examples of novella are Animal Farm by George Orwell, Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. Then the next literary term is onomatopoeia. And onomatopoeia again is a figure of speech in which a word tells of a sound. Clap, isn't it? Clap. What is applause? You are applauding, clapping. A sound is being created. Clap is an example of onomatopoeia. There are words like clutter and clank, khad khad, we call in Hindi. Clap, as I've just given an example of clapping. Hiss, the sound which is made by reptiles and the other animal, that is hiss. Bang, dham, bang. They are the examples of onomatopoeia. So onomatopoeia is a figure of speech in which a word tells of a sound. In which a word tells of a sound, and that is an example of onomatopoeia. And the last literary term which is prescribed is oxymoron. And again, it is a figure of speech in which two opposite words are brought together. And the words are opposite. If you separate the two words, they will give opposite meaning. Wisest fool. Jakes the Fool of Shakespeare is called as the wisest fool. He is the clown of Shakespeare. He is wise, he is fool. Two opposite things. Wise and a hushar, fool and a bewkuf. Now, wisest fool. So, now the two opposite words are brought together. I've given you the one example which is not in the book, but these are the examples which are there in your text. For example, freezing fire. Freezing, the water freezes when the temperature goes below 0 degree. When it goes into minus, the freezing process starts. So, freezing fire is an example. Freezing and fire. Freezing represents something which is very cold. Fire, something which is hot. Happy, grief. Grief is sorrow. How can happy grief, a person be happy in grief? Isn't it? But happy grief. And these are the examples of oxymoron. Huh? Then in Paradise Lost, the Paradise Lost, Milton describes hell as darkness visible. How is darkness visible? Darkness visible. That is how the hell is described. So Shelley, in his poem To a Skylark, he is inspired by a skylark, and he calls that bird a harmonious madness. Harmony, musical, madness, pagalpan. So harmonious madness, opposite words are being brought together. Darkness and visible, happy and grief, freezing and fire, wise and fool. Huh? So in all these examples, the opposite words have been brought together. And this is an example of oxymoron. This is an example of a figure of speech which is called oxymoron. So here we complete the literary forms and terms which are prescribed for the BA second year, third semester English literature syllabus of Nagpur University. The slides, they will be available on YouTube, and with the help of this slide, you can study, you can make your points, and prepare yourself to answer the questions which will be there in your examinations. So with this, I thank you all, and declare that the session is over here.